Jeff Slauson here from 19 News Now at the 19 News digital desk. Yesterday on the House floor here in the state of Ohio was a new bill proposed that essentially would change the way that the marijuana legalization happens in a couple of ways. First, it would change the way that taxes are done and associated with how much would be going to certain pools, certain areas. The second area that it would change is it would allow municipalities to essentially opt out of weed legalization. So what exactly does that mean? Well, we spoke with the author of that bill about exactly what they're planning and where they're hoping this goes from here. And let's bring you the story on the latest. Again, this is something that was proposed yesterday. On December 7th is when weed legalization takes place. And just to start off here, for those that are unfamiliar, give the elevator pitch is the way I like to say it for House Bill 341.
Thank you so much. So, of course, the people spoke what they wanted on issue 2, and I certainly respect that, as do my colleagues in the House. But it was just a binary choice. It was yes or no. They didn't get to tackle the nuances in that. And I've spoken with some people who voted yes for that, who understand exactly what we're trying to do, and they agree with it. And my primary purpose is when I looked at the tax schedule there on where did the funds go that come in, the revenues that come in from taxes, where does that go? The lowest thing on there had to do with drugs, as far as education, prevention, recovery, things like that. And as a person who has had addictions in my family, my father died from his addictions. We got other family members going through addictions. And probably I always kind of feel like I'm a kind of a person that I could not do it in moderation myself, which is why I don't do anything, because I don't want to give into that addiction process. I've always supported people who are in recovery, tried to be there, tried to be a friend. But when you look at this, that was the least supported thing through the taxes at 25%, and they were supporting, the social equity avenue with 38% of the tax revenue, 38% of the tax revenue, which to me that sounds like they're just putting more pot shops in the most underprivileged areas of Ohio, which is not going to be helpful, I don't think. So we didn't eliminate that, but what we did is we said, okay, let's create 5 buckets. And in those 5 buckets, we're going to distribute it evenly, and let's divide the things that interest me the most. Let's divide it into 2 categories, and let's have education and prevention is one bucket, and then let's have recovery and substance abuse in another bucket. And so that we're making sure that we're taking care of people who are dealing with all those things. So that was my number 1 top goal in this. We also provided funds for law enforcement training, which is very vital, very important. We didn't eliminate any of the areas, but we just made sure we added those. We leveled it out. It's all right around 19%, between 19-20% fraction in there. And then also the idea that there were no regulations. And so, everybody wants that. Everybody wants to be free from regulation. Wouldn't it be great if you can just write in no regulations for your own industry, whatever it is? Of course, the alcohol and the beer and wine industry would love that. But that's why we have things like DORAs. What is a DORA? It's a designated outdoor refreshment area. And basically with that, we're saying, okay, you can drink over here, but this is not a good place to be drinking in the public. And so, maybe some local municipalities want to do a DOMA, a designated outdoor marijuana area. Maybe they want to say, okay, the school playground is not a good place for everybody to gather and smoke pot, where the kids are out there riding the toys, going down the slides, hitting the swings and the merry-go-round and all that. Maybe this isn't a good place. Maybe standing outside of the entrance of the school while you're waiting to pick up your kids is probably not a good place to smoke pot. But when you're at home and when you're in other places, have at it. And so we just want to allow that flexibility for the local municipalities to respond to their local constituents and say, this is what's acceptable in our community, this is what's not acceptable. And then to essentially continue the conversation. Because that was just a conversation starter there. Anytime you introduce a bill, and that's what this is, it was a citizen-initiated statute. None of us introduces a bill that gets passed without going through a committee process. And what does the committee process do? It's good. It's good for my bills. It's good for everyone's bills. And going through that committee process, the people who are for it come in and speak. People who are against it come in and speak. And then the interested parties come in and speak. And we tweak it. We refine it. We look for the unintended consequences. And by the time we're done, we've heard from all of the community, we've improved the bill, and we've done something that's great for all of Ohio.
We're talking about the time frame with this next week, December 7th. is when things start to slowly happen with this. Does that mean that there needs to be a rushing aspect of your bill or any other bills that potentially could make some changes to this, or is there kind of a leeway with that?
So that's a great question. I don't think we're bound by the December 7th deadline because the infrastructure is not in place. Certain aspects are going to take effect, such as the home grow, the ability to smoke it, and so on and so forth. I think that all takes effect, but those are not things that I'm trying to undo. I'm not trying to reverse those things. I don't think that the legislature is going to try to reverse those things in any way, shape, or form. And so those things taking effect are fine, but the tax base, the tax revenue is going to come in from this, we're still quite a ways down the road before that ever takes place. So I think we're good, and I certainly don't want to rush the situation. I want there to be time to deliberate. I want to hear from everybody on all sides on this issue. I want this to be a continuation of the discussion where everybody's voices is heard, and what we come out with is something that everybody says, okay, this is a better version of issue 2.
Yeah, so just for clarity, not a rushed effort for this. This is going to go through all of the channels that normally are done, and the due process in this will be very standard with how other House bills are brought forward.
That is my plan. I'm not in charge once I introduce it. I'm not in charge of what committee it goes to, when it gets heard, or if it gets heard. And the reality is it may not even be my bill that gets taken up. It could be someone else's bill. But I wanted to be first in the discussion because I really wanted to emphasize the education, the prevention, and the recovery services aspect of that. I wanted to make sure that was always at the top of the conversation. And so that's why I was interested in, getting it out as soon as possible.
Representative, you mentioned the aspect of some alcohol-related laws, right, where some municipalities can allow for certain areas to allow for outdoor drinking, things like that. This bill itself would allow for municipalities to make some changes as well. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It would give the municipalities the ability to reflect the concerns of their constituents in their community.
So how would that work? Would they then appeal to the state and say, we do not want any of the dispensaries here? What type of a framework would you see if this does pass?
So first of all, as the bill, I don't expect the bill to come out of committee in the same shape that it goes in. So there's going to be a lot of conversations and a lot of questions in that. But if it were to pass as is, then it would be either up to a local ordinance or a local referendum to decide those things.
When you consider all that has been happening with this, we have now been at the point, we've had the debate, the election, now just a week out here. For any people that are either concerned or unsure about what's going on here and are hoping for some sort of intervention or hoping for some more clarity, specifically coming from the state, you mentioned that you have a bill. Are you anticipating more to be coming from yourself or other colleagues, things like that, over the next couple of days, weeks, months, years?
Well, I do know that we have one representative who has already submitted a bill of intent. And so she's reserved some space. I know that her primary purpose was to make sure there was something in there for law enforcement. I don't know if she was going any farther than that. The grapevine says that there are other people out there who have some ideas as well. I don't know if they're going to be dropping their bills or not. I would assume so. I know leadership, both in the House and the Senate, have some ideas. I would expect that their ideas are going to take a lot of precedence, based on what they hear from both chambers. And are they going to throw those ideas into HB 341, or are they going to craft a new bill? I don't know. No one has told me. And quite frankly, I'm okay with whatever happens so long as it's done in collaboration and cooperation with the entire legislature and representative of the constituents in the state of Ohio. People get to come in and have their voice. Ultimately, I think it'll be a better bill, and I'm happy to be part of that discussion regardless of how it turns out.
We, of course, will have much more on this tonight on 19 News at 10 and 11. But first, 19 News at 7:30 starts over on the CW. See you there in just a few minutes. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson, 19 News. Have a great day, great night. Much more to come, both on air and online.
19 News, now streaming on Samsung Smart TV. Search for Channel 1035.